Welcome back, guys, to another video. So here we're continuing with our Shopify React customization. So if you guys are liking this kind of videos and you want to learn React, the main stack, and you want to learn how to be a full stack developer, if that is what you want to do, then please subscribe to this channel. You'll definitely learn a lot. And on this video, if you didn't follow on the first one, we're building a React Shopify app. So if you didn't watch the first one, go watch the first one so that you can link up here. But then if that is too much for you, I have a Git repository that will keep you in sync with us. So before we get started, smash that like button, subscribe, comment, like, share, do all the things, guys. So where we left it off is I could click on the hoodies. It fetched all the hoodies from the Shopify API. That is my Shopify store. So it fetched the clothes from my store using the Shopify API. I could get the jeans, we got that, and I could get my sneakers, right? So now what we want to do is we want to click, and on click of that should take me to another page, right? So that's what we want to do. So now let's open our text editor. Let's say Atom. So that's what we'll be using as our text editor to code this up. So now while that is opening, we definitely need the docs to help us. So we say Shopify buy. So we say Shopify buy SDK. So this is what we're using. So this is very crucial. So it's more of this API that we'll be using throughout this whole entire video. And the good thing is this API, it is very clear, guys. Like, I've never seen clear API documentation like this one. And I don't know where. Now I'm going to Shopify by SDK docs. Looks like I'm moving on and off on a tangent because this documentation, here we go. So this is what I was looking for. So this documentation is what I'm looking for, right? So this is one of the most clear documentation I've ever worked with. So now this is open, right? So now what do we want to do? Let's go to components, let's go to product. Let's start with hoodies, right? So what do we want to do with hoodies? We want to click on this thing and it should take us to another route. So how do we do this? So now import from React router DOM, we want to import link. So that's what we want to import, and then from there I'll wrap this around the link, this image, or let's wrap this whole entire container around the link. Remember to close that, and then I have a to property. So this should go, so we need to use the backticks. So this should go to /product-details, and then we put in the ID, which will say that, and then we say product and that ID, right? So this is the ID that we'll be using because that is always unique. So that is what we want to render, and then we give it a class name, say class name, and then we say router __ link, right? So that is what we need. So now let's register that route within our app.jsx. So we come here, so under that switch we say route, and what do you put in there? We put navigation bar, and then we put in say for now let's have an h1, and that will say product detail, right? So that's what we do. But then obviously right now nothing is happening. We say path, and then the path, this will say product dash details slash and then semicolon or colon, then ID. So I believe it's details product, it's product dash details slash product ID, and then so product details and then colon ID. Right, so now this is what we do. So now let's test it out. Let's come here, I click on that, and then it sends me to the product detail. Now you can see also the ID, we are getting it. There we go, there. Right, so now what do we want to do with that? So now let's create a component, that component here in product, and then we'll say product details dot JSX, and then we'll say arrayfc, and instead of that we put it like const that, like that, and then we say product details, say product details, right, and then within here let's render that my component, it's fine, and then we take it to the app.jsx. So let's import that. We'll say import from components products, we want the product details, we wanna import the product details, and then here we put in the product details, right? So now that should render my component, right? That's fine. So now let's go to the docs and see how can we get a product by its ID. So we come to the docs, and then we see we have fetch single product. So this is what we want, right? So we can just copy this function, and we can close app.js and that, and then just paste that there. But then what we'll need definitely is import, we'll need client from Shopify buy, and then we'll need to come to hoodies, grab the client connection, and then let's paste it right up here, and that is a capital letter C to match that, and that is fine, right? So remember, this is your store name dot my Shopify, and then here's your storefront access token, right? So now let's comment this out because this is just for reference. I can even put it down. This is just for us to reference on. So now what do we want to do? We need to use effect in the use state. So we'll say use effect and use state, right? So now what do these things do for us, right? We'll say use effect. On use effect, I want to fetch that product, right? So now what do I do? First I need the import from React router DOM. I need the use params. I think it's params or use param, I'm not sure, but then we'll see. So what we do from that is we say const id, and then we say use param, right? I think that should be more of like that. Let's see if that gave an error. So use param is not expected from that. So quick search react router use params. So I think it's params. Yeah, it's params. I just wanted to see how the name, it's not param but then params, right? So now I believe use effect is not defined. So yeah, so now we're not getting any errors, right? So now let's just log out that ID. Let's see if I say ID, come back here. So that is just to get all the parameters, because you must note that the ID is a parameter. There we go. So we are getting that parameter ID because it knows that this is an ID. How does it know that? before to show you that. Here we said dot, we said semicolon, we said colon ID, hence it knows that that param is an ID, right? So that's what we're structuring from the params with Node, not with Node man, with our React router, right? So now once we have that done, what do you want to do is, we know that we have this already, so let's comment this out so that you guys can see. So this part we have already because we have that ID, so we can comment this out because we have. So now what do we now want to do? We'll say client dot product dot fetch, and then I want to pass in the ID, and then it brings back a promise to me of that product, and then let's log out the product and then catch any trailing errors, right? So if there's any trailing error, I wanna log that out as well. So now we have this part, so let's comment that out so that we don't get unnecessary errors, and then we want this use effect to render once, so we do it like that. So now let's come here, so let's see, this client that product is not so why am I getting an error there? Okay, this is weird. So here I'm not getting an error here, but then I'm getting an error on my browser. So this is weird, to be honest with you. And that is weird, to be honest. Okay, so let's see what's happening. So that is weird, no lie, because if on the terminal I'm not getting any errors, why am I getting errors there? So now that's fine. So what we do is we grab this whole entire thing that we got from the docs. That's what we do. We grab that whole entire thing, we paste it there, but then now we replace this with ID because we don't have product ID. We replace that with ID, and then we see what happens with this, right? So just a quick check that both that are the same. So now that should work. Now let's come to hoodies. So I get all those hoodies, I come here, I get now the product. I don't know why it was wrong with my implementation there, but then now we're getting the product stuff, right? So you can see the same ID, Z2LK, right? So now we have that product details, right? So now we have to render them here within our component. So how we want to render that is, remember we're using this demo as our source of help. So if I come here to hoodies and I come here to this one, we want to render it like so, right? So now let's come here, let's see how we can do that, right? So now what I want to do is, well, the moment I grab this product, right, what am I interested in, right? I'm interested in the image, its name, and its price. That's what I'm interested in. So now let's get where those things are at. Okay, so it's not necessary, so it's fine. Let's just throw in that whole entire product. So we'll say const, and then say product, and then say set product, and then we say use state, and then we put that empty array, right? So now what we do is we then say on this use state, I say set product to product, right? So now the fun part begins, right? So now we want to render that thing here. So now what then do we do? We now say so that we make sure that this component will only mount or show when the product is there. So now let's do this. We'll say product is actually null on initial load. So we'll say if product is equal to null, I want you to return an h1. So this is sort of like us demo showing a loading screen. So here you'd put something here, and then else I want to render this component, right? So else I want to render that component, right? So that's what we want to do, but now I'm not there. So now what then do we do? So we now know that this component will show only when that thing is there. So say class name, we'll say product details, right? And then we'll put in the product details left. So we want a div which will have a class name of product details left, and the next one will be a div that will be the product details right. Product details right. So now on the left I only want the image and its name. So now what do we do here? We come say class name, we say product details, and then dash L image. So I'll give the L a capital, okay, small letter, and then that. So this is just a choice, you guys could do anything. And then I say source, and then now let's check that console log, right? So we can know how this image is coming in. So now how do we know that? I think we come to images, we come to 0, and here in 0 we have source, yeah, so it's images 0 then source. I believe that's the way it would go. So I would say product, because remember this product now will have that whole entire object. So we'll say product dot images and then 0 dot source. So let's see if that will render out for us. So now that is rendering. You can see now that image is rendering, right? So now what do we want to do? We also want its handle. So we say product dot handle and dot value, yeah. So handle dot value, I think that's what we're looking for, right? So here we'll make another div, and then within that div we'll give it a class name, and that class name will be products details L and name, right? So here we'll have say an h4, and then within that h4 we'll have product dot handle dot value, I believe. Let's see. Okay, so it's not giving us that. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. So this is weird because the handle is an object, when I close that handle, so I believe it should be dot handle. Okay, so guys, I'm really not getting the sense of how this thing, because it should work, to be honest. in my understanding that should show. Let's refresh. In my understanding that should show, but it's not showing. Okay, so I'll say handles. Let's open handle. So I think it's handle alone. So as you can see, it's handle alone. So I don't know why it was showing more things. I don't know, honestly. So okay, so it's fine. So now what else do we need? We need the price. Finally, we need the price. That's all that we need. So now where can we get this? Let's see. So I believe if we go to variant and then array that, and then okay, no, I can see on variance 0 we have tons of things here. We have the price v2. Okay, that is too much. We have the price. That's all we need. So variance 0 and then price. So now what we do is here on the right we have to follow that layout. So the layout says that we have product summary. So we'll have an h2 saying product summary, and then we have, say, maybe an h4, and that will say price. And then remember, I'm using South African rand, so I'll say product dot variant 0 dot price. Right, so I believe that should do me justice. Let's see. So there we go, we have that. So further not remembering the currency. So if you guys are from whatever country, if you Indian, I believe you guys are using PKR. If you from America, I believe dollars, things like that, Canadian dollars. So yeah, so basically now we're done with what we wanted here. So now it's the matter of styling this thing to like that. So now let's make a style sheet for that. So let's come here. So we create a style sheet, say product details.css, and then bring it here to the side, and then I import go back, styles, and then product details. Right, now what do I want to do here? Here the parent, which is product details, right, this will display flex, and then justify content, space between, align item center. So now, okay, so why is it loading forever? That tells me that there might be some errors. So the moment this thing loads forever and doesn't just load, it tells me that the errors, I don't know what error I have within my CSS, to be honest with you guys. I really don't know what's happening with that thing. So product details, let's say color red. Just why the hell is this thing loading forever? To be honest, I don't know. I don't know why this thing is loading forever. Is there a mistake that I'm making within here? So there's really no mistake that I'm making here. So if this thing carries on like this, I believe for this video I'll have to switch this atom purifier. Okay, let's just go switch it off, because yeah, let's go switch that off. Go to packages, let's switch it off, because I don't see any problems there. So just disable this for now. Anything that will, okay, let's see. Okay, it saves. Right, so I don't know what problem was there. from this thing. So if I bring that back, you can see now I have that. So one thing that I'm missing is this QTY and button. So let's get that up. So say QTY, and then I bring in the select. So yeah, it is weird why that thing was loading forever and not saving. So now I'll say class name, and I'll say QTY, and then bring in option, and then yeah, in the option we'll give it a dot dot dot, and then yeah, we'll say 1 2 3 4. 4 should be fine, and then we'll give it a value 1, value 2, value 3, and then 4. Right, so now we need the button. Finally, say button, and then yeah, button will say add to cart. Right, so I believe that is that. Yeah, so let's continue styling this. Right, so I'll say padding of this, say 3 rem. So we have that off the wall like that. That should be fine. I believe say 5. I believe 5 is fine by me if we see that there. So now we just want to basically say justify content space around instead of between, so that we have them like that, something like this. So now let's get this box shadow, because let's get the property values of that box shadow, and then now we can get that. It is basically this one, right? So we get those properties, and then what we do is we then say dot product details dash right, and then we give it that box shadow, right? So we have that. Now obviously now this comes back to me giving that padding, but then margin, and then margin that say 5 rem, and then we have that. But then now for that one I'll say padding of 3 rem, so we have that like this. So now I just want to give some bit of spacing. So what do I do? Right, so because I'm lazy to make class names, for the product details, right, and I want to grab the h2, and I want to do the same thing for the product details, right, and I want to grab the h4, and I want to do the same thing for the product details, right, and I want to grab the select. I want to margin bottom say 1.3 rems. Alright, so now you can see I've margin bottom that, but then obviously on the select it did nothing. So why it didn't do nothing? Watch this. So now I come here, I give this a class name of btn, and then I come here and I say btn. I want to display that as block. So now that displayed as block, and then now it's proper. So now what else do I want to do with this thing? Right, so now I just want to style the button to be somewhat like this, right? So now how do we do that? Right, so display block, on a margin 0% auto, So that should center me like that, and then I want to give it a padding, say of 0.4 rem, 1 rem, and then that is more like it. And then I want to give it a border, so don't forget the semicolon. I want to give it a border, a radius of 5 pixels, and we're looking like that. So that means that I need a bit of increment on my padding. That's more like it. And then I want to say btn on hover. I want to say that should be a background color of black, and then color for the text to be white, and then we want to give it a transition. Don't forget the semicolon. Say transition. I say is in and out for 0.4 seconds, and I think that should be our button. Right, so now we have that, but then that text is a bit bolder, so we want to say font size, say 1.5 rem. I think that will be big. And then font weight, we'll say bolder. I believe this will be way too big. Yeah, it is a bit big. So let's say 1.1 rem. Right, I think 1.1 rem is proper. So now we have that. So now let's add state management so that we manage this QTY. Right, so now what do we do? So we come here, we say const QTY, and then set QTY. Right, so let's make that a small letter Q. We'll say use state, and then initial value is 1. Right, so now what do we want to do? We want to say on change of this. I say on change. I believe now with CSS we're done for this component. So we say on change. I want to say e go to set QTY to e dot target dot value. Right, and then on click of this button I want to alert that QTY. So on click I want to send the, let's just somewhat do that. We'll say add to cart, and then what we want to do is we want to pass out, or we don't need to pass out that on that, so there's no need for this because we already have the ID. So when we add to cart, let's make this component. So I want to alert the QTY to see that we are managing state properly. So say const and then we don't forget that equal sign. Right, so now let's just alert QTY. Right, so let's see, click on that, it's 1, change that to 2, it's 2, change that to 4, it's 4. Right, so now we have state being managed properly. Right, as you can see. Right, so now what do I want to do? So let's see something. When I click on this, it gives me those 3 dots. So this is something that I want to validate. So what I'll do is on those 3 dots, if someone clicks on them, I'll give them a value of 1, because I always want to make sure that whenever someone clicks add to cart, there should be at least a value of 1. So I avoid such mistakes. And yeah, so it's sort of like if I click on that, if I click on this, it shows me 1. Right, so now let's add to cart. That's what we want to do right now. How do we add it to cart? We come to the docs again. So these docs are very clear, guys. They're very clear. So what I want to do is always what we need to do is we need to create checkout. That's what we want to do, and then we keep on updating the checkout by adding line items. So that's what this thing does. So now when the app mounts, this is what we always want to run, but then obviously checking some things. So let's handle that. So let's come to the app dot that. So now we need a use effect. Right, we'll say use effect. So now what do? We say use effect, and then we put in this code. Right, so now what do we want to do? So this thing will bring back what we call a checkout, and it will have a .id, right? So now if we were to run this, and then let's see what's happening. So use effect cannot be called on at the top level. React hooks must be called in the React function component. Oh yeah, makes sense. So let's take this code and put it here. So yeah, it makes sense. Alright, so let's take that, put that there. Right, now let me show you what this thing brings back once the component mounts. So let's remove the log of the hoodies. Let's come here, hoodies, product, and then we say hoodies, and then let's remove that console log. Where's that console log? No, not hoodies, in product details, this console log, right? That's what I want to remove. But then let's refresh that so that we can see the checkout. There we go. So this thing creates a checkout, and what we're interested in is the checkout ID, right? This is the ID which is generated, but then we want to persist this user's checkout. So if we were using Node, we would persist this within a database for security reasons, things like that, right? But then right now I'm just showing you a basic integration with Shopify. So now how do we persist that properly? Just in this basic way. We close that. We now want to do something like this, right? We'll say const, and then we'll say user underscore cut is equals to local storage. So that is what we're going to be using, local storage dot get item, and we'll call it cut underscore ID. If it's not there, I'll say false. Right, so now what then do we do? Let's remove those comments. To remove those comments, we now say if user underscore cut is equal to false, I want to create the checkout, and then what I want to do is, instead of logging this thing out, I'm not interested in that. I want to say local storage dot set item, and I'll set it to cut underscore ID, and then else, if then that cut does exist, then there's nothing that I want to do, right? We'll leave it like that. So here I'm getting error, so local storage is not defined. Oh, I didn't say local storage, local. Oh, why am I spelling this wrong? So local storage, right? So now that's what we want to do, is local storage. Where am I having this typo again? At least 2 arguments must be passed. Oh, so when I set item, I forgot. So when I set item, I need to set back a value. So the value is checkout.id, right? So that is the value that we want to pass through. So now if I come back here, and then we see within our local storage, now that should be persisted. So where's that memory or storage? Then I come to local storage, I come here, and then you'll see that we have the cut ID. So that is what we have, cut ID, right? So now we can clear all cookies, actually not cookies, but in the local storage, and then refresh this page, and then we'll definitely have hectic. So let's see, refresh that, come to storage, come to local storage, and then we have that cart ID, right? So now this cart ID, no matter, even if I refresh now, it will never change, it will always be persisted, right? So now what do we want to do right now with that? Right, so now we're done with that. Now we always want to constantly edit the cart based on that ID. So now before we carry on, let's make sure that we have the same working thing. We'll say import from React router DOM. I want the link, and this link must take me, when I grab this image, must take me to that same component. We say link, it should take me to, remember we say that, to product dash details slash, and then product ID dot ID, and then basically that, and I do that, I bring that down, I bring that down, push that in, push that in, push that in. So now, knowing that all other components also they change like this, I can copy that, save that, and then come to the sneakers. But then first I have to import the link so that I do not get unnecessary errors. So React router DOM, and we save that, and then knowing that that div is the same, because remember we just reused the component structure. So we push that in to structure that. We're no more using the beautify there, so we have to beautify our own code. So now these products must do what they should do. Click on that, it's sending me on that product. As you can see, now things are working as they should, right? So now we need to add to cart. So now how do we do that? So now let's go to the product details so we can do that. We go to product details. So now on add to cart, what do we want to do? So we add to cart, we don't want to alert anymore, but then let's come to the docs and we call it adding line items, right? That's what we want to do. So now how we do this is, let's copy this whole entire thing. That's what we want to do, right? And then let's bring it at the bottom. I believe that will be our reference, right? So now what do we want to do? We need the cart ID, which is the checkout ID, so we can grab that the moment this thing loads, right? So how do we do that? We say const, and then we say cart underscore ID, say it's equal to local storage dot get item, and it's cart ID. So we know that always this will be available, because when our app mounts, it will check if the cart ID exists. If it doesn't exist, it creates a new one, right? So now we can comment this out, knowing that we now have this. So now we have to add line items, so which is the variant ID. So now we need to know what the variant ID is. So how do we know that? So now let's log out this product. So it's console log product, and then let's comment this out so that we can save and see what we want to see. So we come here, open that, and then bring that up. So we need a variant ID. So now where do we get this thing? So I believe so variant ID, right? So it's not the ID which I'm not sure of. So let's say options, and then array, and then we have that. That is not what we want. We have that. So this is, hopefully by now you guys would have found it better than me. So title, the type, the variant, right? So that's what we're looking for, the variant. And then there's an ID as a variant 0, and then the ID. So this is what we're looking out for, right? So this is what we want, the variant ID. So now if we bring this back up, so now we need to add this thing up, right? So now let's grab this function and then put it here in our add to cart. Do that. So now remember, we have the QTY, so instead of 5 we add the QTY, and then these things are not necessary, the custom attributes. And then the variant ID, where are we getting that? We are getting this from okay, I think this should be passed out as props, because by default when this component mounts, okay, let's see if this will throw an error. So let's say product dot variant and then of 0 dot ID. So if this throws an error, then I think what I was thinking I was right. So yeah, so I think variant 0 dot ID QTY, we have that, right? So now let's clean that up a bit, right? So now we have those line items to add. So now we can nuke this out. So now what we want to do is we just want to add this thing, right? So now we do that, and then we come here, we do it like that, and instead of checkout ID we have that ID. No, we have this cart ID, right? So we say cart ID, and then we have the line items, and then we have the checkout, right? So now I can do that, and then now let's test this out if it works. So we're getting some errors here. So it says unexpected. What was unexpected here? Okay, so I'm not following to what was unexpected. So let's see. So it's a syntax error, unexpected token at line 25. This, no, I thought that should be the error. Okay, so now this is just because of that. That's fine. Oh, because I was adding this within the cart. Now it makes sense. It makes sense. I should be adding this outside that array. So checkout ID obviously doesn't exist, and I need to say cart ID. So now that makes sense, right? So now let's see if this works. Right, so now let's remove all console logs, which is this one. I don't need it anymore. And I refresh page, I delete everything, and then I add this product, right? And then I get that. So let's see what I get. So yeah, I get that, and then I get the variable values. Okay, so let's add another thing. So let's see how it would look if I add another product, say hoodies, and then let's delete that, and then let's add another product, say that hoodie, I add that. So I expect 2 products. As you can see, I'm getting 2 arrays, 2 objects. So now I know that this objects are my properties, right? My objects, my whatever that you guys, you get the sense, right? So now I know that this thing is working, my add to cart, right? So now what do I want to do here? What I want to do now is I want to click on here, go to cart, get my cart items. That's what we want to do, right? So this is our last move, guys. So now let's come here to home and then navigation. Right, so now when I come there, I'll say that from React router DOM I want to, I already have link, forgot. So now within that link, where is the cut icon? I believe this is the one. So we'll say link and we'll say close that and then clean it up a bit. So this is the part where I miss my VS Code, to be honest. So we'll say 2 and then we'll say cut, say class name, router link, and that should do. So now what I want to do is on the JSX, the app, I want to make that a route. So say route, and then we bring the navigation bar, and then for now let's have an H1 which will say my cart. Right, so now that is that. So now I come back here. Oh, I need to give it a path, that's why it's showing my cart. So I say cart. Right, so yeah, that's why it was rendering that component. Now if I click on this, it brings me to my cart, and you can see the route is cart. So now we want to grab the cart items by the cart ID. So here you come to fetching checkout. So this is what you want to grab, and then you close this. We can close this. We now come to components, and this is another entity. It's not part of the products, but then cart, so there's no need to make a folder for it. So we say cart.jsx, and then we say rafc. We leave it as my component that you will find. We say import, and then the client from Shopify by. We put in that component here, not that component, but in that code there. We want to grab this connection to our Shopify, and then we paste it right on top. We do that, we block that a bit, and then I go to my, what we call my app.jsx. Instead of this, I want to bring in my cart. I want to refactor this component, importing, say const, and then say equal to that, and then we'll say cart. Right, so I want to import that. So we come here, say import from, we go that, now we go there, components, cart, and then I want to import cart. Right, so now instead of that, we put in the cart component. So we clean things up a bit, and that should be showing my component. As you can see now, shows my component. So now let's go grab our cart items. So now we need the checkout ID, which we named it as cart ID. So now what we do is we say const cart underscore ID is equals to local storage dot get item, and we want to get that item by cart underscore ID. So now we have that there. So we need the use effect and use state. So we'll say use effect, and we want the use state. Right, and then that's what we need. So now this, we have the cart ID already. So now we need the use effect to work for us. Right, we'll say use effect, and then what we need to do is we need to say client dot checkout dot fetch, and then I want to fetch by the cart underscore ID. It brings back a promise dot then, and then we will say that will be our cart, and then let's log that out, and then catching trailing errors. So there's no need, because I don't know if that was the case why it was throwing an error, because the last time, remember when we typed it out ourselves, it was giving an error, but then hopefully now it doesn't give an error. So let's do that. So let's see. Right, so let's open our console, and then we getting that. So now let's refresh and see if, okay, so it's bringing back the object. So let's see subtotal. Subtotal price will only make sense for 999. So what other products? So order, I don't know. It's now line items. There we go. So line items is the one that we need. As you can see, it's having the 2 products, right? So that's what we wanna interact with to show the content, and we need it's either payment due or subtotal price, whatever that we want. All of that should do us justice, right? So now so currency code, let's see, currency code is ZAR for South Africa, so yours might be having whatever currency that you guys have. So now how did we handle the cart items? Let's go to cart, let's see, right? So basically we're handling it like this, and this should be proper, nice and simple. So basically we need the image and the price, that's all, and then the delete item to delete this item that I'll also show you, so that when I delete that item, and then I get that being 0, right? So now let's do that. So now we say on the use state, we'll say const cart underscore, we'll say cart underscore, let's say cart items, and let's say set cart items, so use state, and then initially this is null, and then I'll say const total price, and then set total price, and then use state initially will be 0. So why am I doing this is because I don't want to put in the whole cart, because I don't want to use the whole cart. I want to say set cart items to list items. So if I'm not mistaken, we come here and then we see in that thing it was having list items, if I'm not mistaken. So let's log the cart one more time, let's see. So I'm getting an error of list items. Let's do that. So let's refresh that. Okay, so I'm on a different page, that's why I'm wondering why am I not getting this logs. I'm on a different page. It's nice to be me, guys. So we say line items like that, right? So I was wondering why am I, because I'm on the deployed one, so I was really wondering. So now we do that, we get those line items, and then we say set total price, which will be cart dot, and then we say cart dot total price is fine, right? I don't know why they have 50 things that do with the same thing. So now we have that, so now we've eased through the whole process of doing just one thing, right? So now we do the same thing, so that we'll say if cart items is equal to null, what do I want to do is I want to return an h1, and that will be saying fetching cart, right? And then else I do that, I do this, right? So now this is what I want to do. Now what I want to do here is I want to have the left part and the right part. So we'll say class name, and then yeah, we'll say cart, right? So now, because I know that once this part renders, it means that this thing is no more null. So I can just, without any checkings, I say cart items. So now I have to be careful, because what am I mapping through? So let's go to list items and see. So we say cart items dot map, same time. Right, yeah, I think so. So we'll say cart items dot map, and we will say item, and then this will, oh yeah, first things first, right? So first things first, need those curly brackets, not forgetting that. And then I'll say cart items dot map, and then I say items, and then I say return. Let's just test it out with an image, having a source, before we go even more further, because you can go more further just to find out that this thing is not working, right? So this should be the same as that. So that's not showing, right? So let's see what to do. So images does not exist. The images or image, let's go to the 0 one, go to 0, and then we come to, what do we need here? Not quantity, man, but then let's say variant, and then on variant there's image, and then it goes further, and then I have the dot source. So what does this thing would say? Items dot variant dot image let's check that out. So variant dot image, and then dot source. So item dot variant dot image dot source. So it's a bit different from, so you can see now we have those two items there, right? So now that's what we have. So now what do we need is, on each and every one we need a price at the bottom of it, right? So we know that this is working, so let's just copy that so that we don't redo things ourselves. So now we'll say we need a div, and this div, right, yeah, it will be named cut left, let's say class name cut left. So I just need the image, source. I could have just pasted that, could have just pasted this, I just needed that. And then I need also the name of it, so h4. On that h4, the name will say variant, so definitely not by the image, but then by title, I believe. Okay, that's not it. By okay, so product, and there's a handle, and then there we have that handle. So it's by, I will say items dot variant dot product dot handle, right? So let's test that out. Let's see. So we have those handles there, right? So now that's where we have that. And then now let's come to one more thing. So let's check our cart, how it works. So let's come here to sneakers, let's add to cart, something to cart, and then let's go to that. And then okay, so we just need the cart summary and the subtotal. That's all, right? So on that note, it means that I need that button for deleting. Right, now say delete item, right? So now we come here outside the looping and everything, we'll say div, and then we'll say class name, we'll say cut right, and then we'll have an h2, that will say cut summary, and then an h4, and that would say subtotal, why am I saying total, then subtotal, and then we'll say subtotal, and then the rand, and then we need the $sign for that. So now let's see how we can grab that. So I think this one is straightforward. It is just variant and then price. No, this was for single product. So let's close the line items. So we say variant and then subtotal price. Oh yeah, we've already have that in state, so I forgot that. So remember we took that here, so yeah, we don't have to stress about that. So that was why a good idea for me doing things like that. So now if you check, we have the subtotal price 999, that right. So now let's style this thing, and then let's see to that, and then we delete to cut, and then we should be done with this build, right? So I can remove that. So I'm sure you guys can see the Shopify documentation is really clean. Whoever wrote the documentation for Shopify really knows how to write cool, like clean documentation. This was clean. Like I've seen documentation, but then nothing's as clean as what I'm seeing right here. So go over here, because normally tons of documentation, they're like obscure, so you don't really get to understand what's happening within those docs. So this one is very clean, guys, I tell you. Because let's see how our cart is looking here. Basically, I believe this is justify content around. So we align item center and then justify content space around. So I believe it's more like it, like that, right? But then now, remembering that okay, so I'll have a problem. So I have to wrap this around the div, and that would say class name cut left, and then I'll change this to cut details, right? So now I want to take this whole entire thing and then place it here, right? So I'm doing that because I don't want, see, now I have this straightforward like this. If we're to add another cut item, you'd see now we have something more like straight and all that, instead of having like things being like, yeah, I'm sure you guys get the sense. So now what do we do now with this, right? So now obviously now let's tab this thing over, no, let's tab that over, and then now okay, so now we have that, and then let's padding. Oh no, there's no need for that. Margin, and then say 4M. We bring that a bit there, and that should be fine by me. And then let's get that box shadow. I believe I'm using the box shadow all over, so I could get that same box shadow. So come to my product detail, grab that box shadow, close that. I believe the box shadow is for the cart dash, right. Alright, so now let's do that so that we get a clean page like that. So we're looking good like that. And then I say padding, say 3 rem. So we have that. We need the button saying checkout. Which says proceed to check out. Right, so we have that. So I'll give it the same class name as the other one called btn, so that the stylings cascade down to also this one. As you can see, it cascaded without me doing anything. And then I'll say cut right, and then I'll grab the h2 and I'll say cut right, and what's happening here? Say cut right. This thing is not working for me. Why this paste thing is not working? I don't know. Cut right. I want to grab the h4. I want to say margin bottom, give me 1.4 m. Right, so that is my margin bottom. And then what I want to do is, now let's come to this ones here. Alright, so now if we come to this ones, we want to give from the cart details. Alright, so which would be here. And okay, so there's no need for that. I can just put it right here. I can say I want the h4 to have a margin bottom, say of 1 rem. There we go. Okay, no, not like that, because it's margining wrong. So let's say class btn, let's say btn, but then del btn. Alright, so I'm doing that so that I can get that styling, but then I don't want it to be centered. That's the thing. So yeah, I'll definitely say del btn, and let's say del btn. Hopefully we can remove those things. Let's say 0. Right, so we removed those things. And then I definitely don't want the margin is really that big, not the margin, the padding, it's that big, so something that I don't want. Let's say 0.2 rem. So now that is nice and small. And then let's say margin bottom, say margin bottom, say 1.4 rem. That is getting things at the bottom properly for us. So let's see something. So come here, add that, come there. Now I don't like this thing of this see this cart summary doing what it's doing. So now how do I solve that problem? So I give it position of absolute. So obviously now it looks bad like that, right? So now I don't know if this is gonna solve my problem, but then I didn't like what it was doing, let's say. But then obviously this is obviously taking 100%, so that was a wrong fix. Okay, so it's positioning absolute, right? Okay, so now what I do is I say width of 50%, right? It's taking up that whole screen, as you can see. And then I want the cut left to also have a width of 50%, a width of 50, let's say width of 50 as well, right? But then it's doing that to me. Okay, so I think absolute was not a good fix. So relative, and then top 0%. Okay, so this is not solving my problem. I'm not really liking this thing of going, and I'm not really thinking, and I think I faced the same problem also on this one, but then I'm not really thinking properly as to the solution. Okay, so let's give it a minute. So right now it's 31. So let's say by 32, if I don't find a solution, we stop this thing, right? We stop trying to find a solution for that thing. So now what do I want to do, right? I do that, so not, and then I want to say left of 100 pixel. Let's see, obviously I need the comma there, semicolon, I mean, let's say 50%. Let's see something. So okay, so it's not, okay, so it's moving, right? Okay, so what I need is say maybe 500 pixel. Exaggerate the number so it moved out of the screen. So that was that, let's say 1000 pixel. So that is that here, right? So but then I want it to be a top of 40 pixel, 100 pixel, right? So 200 pixel, right? So that is that there, right? So now what do I want to do next is this images, they're not really good where they are, they're a bit too much close, and we'll say cut. So I could just margin right thing, say 10 rem, so just to avoid tons of hassles. Hold on, how did that, oh okay, so it's working, just needed a bit of more attention, right? So we have that being like that. So obviously this is not the most optimal solution, but then this is the solution that came into mind quick, right? So this is the most, it's not really the most best solution, but then as you can see now I'm not having the same problem that I was, so I can have this scale as much and it doesn't affect this one, right? So now we need to change this to red, no matter what. So yeah, we give it a color, say color, not color, but background, color of red, and then color of white, and then I say dot del dash btn on hover. I want to give it a background color of red, right? So that's what I do. So yeah, so now we have that being red, and then I think let's increase this margin bottom, say 2 rem. You can see now it's not even affecting this thing, right? So now this thing, now we need to delete to cut, and then we'll be done with this build. So now let's see how we can do that. So the final thing on our docs is removing to cut. We need what? The cut ID, and then we Okay, not removing discount. What do we need? Removing line items. Right, so let's grab that. This will be our code that we need, so we can do that. And then let's remove to cart. Let's do that. So now what we need the checkout IDs. Already we have that, which is this cart ID, so we can comment this out, or we can remove that. So we need the line items ID to remove. So now let's see where to get that. Right, so now how we get that is, let's log out this cart and let's read that. So that's the only solution, guys, so there's no other solution. So we come here, now let's read this thing. So we're also missing this key prop, we'll add that after this read. So now we have the line items. So now if I come to just one of these, and then I come to variant, I open that. I don't know, man, like I think personally, hopefully this works, but then I think I'll use the ID. Right, so let's try and do that, and let's see if it doesn't work, we look for another solution. So variant and then ID, so that's what I'm thinking. Right, so now let's have an on click for the remove item to cart. On click on our remove item. So let's make this function, so say const. So now I need to give it this ID. So now let me make sure this is coming from a product, right? So this means that each and every product has the variant that underscore ID. So this means that I can say items dot variant dot ID, right? So variant here, and then you get in, you want the ID, right? So we pass that over, and this will take in an ID, and then we use this part of the code. So we grab this and then paste it here, and then instead of this we give it an ID. We should be fine, right? And then what we do next is we now remove to cart, and that needs this. We now come here outside the array, we bring that up, and then we see what happens. So instead of checkout ID, we want to say cart underscore ID, and then line items dot cart, and then that should do us justice, right? So we're having some errors here. So what are these errors? Let's see. So let's save that. Let's see. So I'm still facing some errors, and I believe the case that is from that. Okay, so I can bring back my I can bring this up like that, and then so the error, where is this error now? Come on, man, I'm not seeing this thing. Okay, so I'm really not seeing where this error is lying now. Okay, so that goes with that. Okay, like I'm honestly not I'm honestly not seeing this error, guys. I'm honestly not seeing this error that this thing is telling me about. So if I save, I get that error, a quick unexpected. What's happening here? So that is that. Card ID. Okay, I thought that would have made sense. It says line 34. Line 34. Okay, so there's nothing happening, guys, in line 34, to be honest, unless maybe I'm seeing things. Okay, so when I save this is now fine. Right, so I'll say client dot checkout dot remove. Let me do this myself then. So it's remove line items dot remove line items, and then I pass in the checkout ID, which in our case is cart ID, and then I pass in the line items ID to remove, line items IDs to remove, and then that returns a callback. Right, so let's comment this out. So now we will say dot then, and then say res, we log out res. Right, so I honestly don't know what the problem was there, but then now it seems it's working. So if I remove that, okay, so now this is giving me an error. It says invalid handle promise rejection. Handle change mutation. What's happening? What's this area? Checkout line. It seems as if the ID that we're passing through is not the correct ID. Right, so let's also handle this key thing, which is really bugging me out. But then I believe, man, before we handle that, if we come to line items and then we open the first one, right, it has an ID, this long ID, right? That's what I believe. Instead of going to variant, things like that, it's items.id. I think this is the one that we wanted. Yeah, I think this is the one, and we'll so much just pass that as a key like that, and then we solve that problem. I believe so, guys. My gut feeling tells me that this is the one that we wanted to use. So that is not throwing any errors. So now there we go. Right, so now that removes the product. So as you can see, now the products are getting removed. Right, so now we have 0. So now let's do the proceed to checkout, so that you can see how the proceed checkout works, even though on mine it won't work because I have a demo account. So now let's come here to cart, and then now we have that. Right, so now proceed to checkout is okay, so where is that thing? Oh yeah, so what happens is with the checkout, when it's created, there's this other thing called W something. I forgot, but then there's this thing called W something. So let me show you guys that. Right, so how I will be able to show you guys is let's come here to products, come here to components. No, I think it's in components. Where do we do this logic? Okay, yeah, right. So how I'll be able to show you guys this is, let's log out the checkout, right? So now what I'll do is I will delete on storage. Okay, so let's remove all the logs. So cut, let's remove that log, and then let's come to local storage, and then let's delete this thing, right? So that you guys can see how the cart thing actually looks like. So we do that, we refresh. So now a cart, okay, so we'll see as to what that error is. So a cart item is like this, right? So now what we want is the web URL. So this is what we want, right? This web URL, right? So this we could actually even save when we create that whole entire thing, but then there's no need for that. What do we do then, right? Is yeah, we could actually even save that just to make our lives easy. So now what we do is we come here to the app, and then we say local storage dot set item, and then we'll say checkout, and then we'll say checkout dot web URL. I think it's like that. Let's see. So it's web URL like that, right? So like that, right? Now let's see as to what this error is saying. I don't know what was happening there. So it's trying to fetch cart, but then it's fine. Let's do that, and then we'll delete everything right now within our storage so that everything syncs in properly. So now let's come to our storage and we delete everything, yeah. Alright, so that everything is in sync. So now we can now refresh that, knowing that that storage now will be made the cart item. So now if I were to show you that, you can see now we have the cart item and the checkout, right? So now what then do we do? We come here to the cart, and then we say on click, we'll say checkout, right? So now by the way, okay, let's just do it like this. I don't know what I was thinking. So now we do like that. We'll say const do that, and then we say window dot location dot href I think dot go. I don't know, guys. No, I think okay, let's just Google search the window dot go. I don't know, just like that. So it will give me that's what I love about Google. JavaScript. So okay, so how to open new tab, JavaScript, but I think it's window.go, something like that. It's just in my mind right now. So yeah, so window.open, blah, 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 blah. So window.open, I believe that is what this thing says. So say window.open, and then then you open local storage dot get item, and the item is check out. Alright, that's what we want to get. Alright, so now let's add things to cart. Let's see if this works. If this doesn't work, we'll see as to what's happening. Alright, I add to cart, I come to my cart, I see that. Now I proceed to check out, and then now we get here, right? So this is where my story ends, because this is a free account, the trial account, so this won't work. But then that is taking us to the checkout. As you can see, Shungwani Boutique, it's showing my store, and then checkouts, things like that, right? So yeah, so this is basically the Shopify app. So we can delete items from cart, and then there's nothing there. I come back, I do that, we come here, we add 2 items to cart. We expect this thing to return back to us 900, and then we add that. We expect to get so yeah, we'll have to handle also some duplication errors, so that is something maybe you guys can like look into. So, but then if I come here to cart, okay, so it's doing nothing there because of those errors. But then let's just do that one more time. So I guess there's a lot of error handling that I neglected there. So we expect 700. Oh yeah, so why is this saying that? So this makes sense. Why is this thing saying this? So this is not some duplication errors. Reading this prompt here, so what happens is I need to throw in this properly. So we come to product details. So instead of q to y alone, I'll say pass int. Alright, making sure that this is an integer. And yeah, so now if I come here, add that, now that should be added properly, and then we expect that number to be proper. So I delete that cart item, and there we go. So now yeah, I was making a mistake myself about the duplication errors. So if I do that, we expect 700. Come here, does that for me. You can see 700. Proceed to check out. It goes to my checkout page, but then now because the trial account doesn't work. So now this is the end of the video, guys. If you liked this video, please like, share and subscribe. This really keeps me motivated. Hoping to see you guys in the next video, and goodbye.